Imagine a world without a dollar, a world without the crisp, undeniable authority of a Federal Reserve note. A world where trust was brokered not with ink on cotton fiber, but with heavy gold, inconvenient silver, or the precarious promise of a local merchant. This isn't some distant, mythological past. This is the raw, chaotic economic reality of the nascent American colonies, a sprawling landscape of ambition and scarcity where true, universal value was the most elusive commodity of all. We begin not with a man, but with a problem. How do you build a nation when every settlement, every state, prints its own currency, often backed by nothing more substantial than hope and a local sheriff's reputation? The very concept of money was a battlefield. Early colonial paper money, the dreaded bills of credit, were notorious for their rapid depreciation, often becoming fireplace kindling faster than they could purchase a bushel of wheat. Picture the bewildered farmer trying to trade goods across state lines, only to discover his Virginia pound is treated as funny money in Massachusetts, sparking disputes that mirrored the tensions already brewing across the Atlantic. This fragmentation was an economic nightmare, a constant brake on growth, innovation, and, crucially, the unified military and political will needed to throw off the shackles of the crown. Our story, The Man Who Invented Money, the untold story of the dollar, is not just about a single genius, but about the societal pressure cooker that demanded a solution, a single, undeniable symbol of American economic sovereignty. Forget the abstract theories in dusty economic textbooks. This is a story steeped in betrayal, desperation, dazzling financial innovation born from necessity, and the almost alchemical transformation of faith into tangible, portable value. Who was the unsung architect who dared to imagine a standardized, federally backed currency in a time when state loyalty trumped national vision? We must first understand the chaos he sought to tame. Think of the First Continental Congress, desperately trying to fund a revolution against the most powerful empire on earth. They had muskets, bravery, and boundless rhetoric, but virtually no liquid capital. The solution they tentatively proposed, the Continental Dollar, was a monumental gamble, essentially borrowing from the future to fund the present. The initial issuance felt revolutionary, a declaration of financial independence as potent as the Declaration of Independence itself. But the wheels of war grind fast, and the cost of maintaining an army fighting a professional military machine was astronomical. The printer ink flowed faster than the public's trust. We've all heard the phrase, "not worth a continental," a stinging indictment of inflationary failure that echoes through history. But what exactly happened to that initial attempt? Was it pure mismanagement, or was there a deeper, almost philosophical flaw in trying to inject perceived value into something backed only by the promise of future victory? The speed at which this first national currency collapsed is a chilling precursor to every subsequent financial bubble, a lesson etched in worthless paper. It taught the Founding Fathers a painful truth. A currency is only as strong as the public's unwavering belief in the entity that issues it. This failure didn't deter them, it galvanized them. It set the stage for the actual architect, the man whose vision moved beyond mere necessity to actual design. This man, whose name you might know in connection with a different, smaller denomination, saw the flaw in the Continental experiment not as a lack of will, but a lack of structure. He recognized that if America was to be a true global power, its currency needed to be as robust, as clear, and as trustworthy as the Constitution itself. His challenge was monumental: convince a fiercely independent populace, still reeling from hyperinflation and suspicious of centralized authority, especially anything resembling a king's treasury, to surrender their local financial autonomy to a single, federal system. This isn't just a story of printing money, it's a story of printing trust. It's about the intricate dance between public skepticism and visionary leadership. We're talking about a man who understood that money is, fundamentally, a social technology, a shared agreement. He needed a system that was mathematically sound, politically palatable, and aesthetically convincing. Think of the political battles. State creditors demanding payment in hard coin versus the desperate need for circulation. The debates were legendary, bitter, and foundational. They argued over interest rates, sinking funds, and the very definition of specie. Our central figure watched this economic anarchy unfold, his mind working overtime, synthesizing ideas from Adam Smith, from the banking houses of Amsterdam, and from the hard-won lessons of colonial barter. He saw the future not as a gradual improvement, but as a clean, decisive break from the past's reliance on bulky metals or easily counterfeited paper. He envisioned a system where the faith was placed not in a pile of gold locked in a vault somewhere, but in the collective, productive power of the entire nation. The sheer audacity of this vision, to create a stable, universally accepted medium of exchange from the ashes of monetary failure, is what makes this story compelling. Who was this man, and what secret ingredient did he possess that allowed him to succeed where the Continental Congress had so spectacularly failed? The path ahead involves secret banking acts, shadowy foreign deals, the rise of national debt as a tool of unity, and the almost mythological struggle to establish the first bank of the United States. But before we meet the man, we must sit in the economic wasteland left by the Revolution, where every coin had a different weight, every bill a different worth, and where the promise of the American experiment hung precariously on the ability to settle a bill. This is the stage, the aftermath of war, the birth pangs of a new economy, and the desperate search for a single, unifying concept of value. The stage is set for the architect of the dollar, the man who understood that true power isn't held at the point of a bayonet, but at the end of a well-managed ledger. His entrance into this financial drama is far more complex than you think, involving clandestine meetings, intellectual duels with rivals, and a deep, almost spiritual commitment to financial order. The common narrative simplifies this transition, but the reality was a terrifying leap of faith where millions of dollars in nascent American capital hung on the success or failure of a few key pieces of legislation engineered by a mind obsessed with stability. The very paper that would one day represent freedom was first conceived in an atmosphere of near-total economic collapse. We need to look past the portraits and the monuments and see the desperate debates in dimly lit rooms, where the fate of every future transaction hung in the balance. What political compromises had to be made? Whose interests were intentionally sidelined to ensure the universal acceptance of this new federal promise? The story deepens when we realize that establishing a national currency wasn't just an economic decision, it was the ultimate political weapon, a means to bind the disparate states together under a single fiscal banner, subordinating state treasuries to a national authority. This was a revolution within a revolution. The silence that followed the collapse of the Continental Dollar was deafening, a vacuum where economic trust once resided. Into this void stepped the improbable figure of Alexander Hamilton, a man forged not in the easy wealth of plantation society, but in the crucible of intellectual combat and revolutionary fervor. His mind was a machine dedicated to order, structure, and most importantly, solvency. He understood a profound truth missed by nearly everyone else. America could not simply print its way to prosperity, it had to borrow its way there. This wasn't just about paying bills, it was about inventing the concept of American national credit. Hamilton's first, most audacious move was the Assumption Act. Imagine the political earthquake this caused. Post-Revolutionary War America was a loose collection of states, each clutching its own meager treasury, many drowning under massive, individual debts accrued fighting the war. Hamilton proposed that the entire federal government should assume these scattered, state-level debts, folding them into one giant, unified national obligation. This wasn't charity, it was brilliant, manipulative financial engineering. By absorbing these debts, Hamilton instantly created a powerful, centralized reason for the states to remain financially tethered to the new federal entity. Every merchant in Boston, every banker in Charleston who held a state IOU, now became a direct creditor of the United States government. Their self-interest was now aligned with national stability. This act transformed debt from a sign of weakness into the bedrock of the nation's credit rating. It was a declaration to the world's great banking houses, in Amsterdam, in London, that the United States was a unified, creditworthy risk. But the political price was nearly ruinous. States like Virginia, which had prudently paid down much of their war debt, cried foul. They argued that Hamilton was rewarding the profligate and punishing the responsible. The debates in Congress were legendary, driven by ideology as much as by ledgers. The Anti-Federalists, led by the deeply skeptical Thomas Jefferson and the brilliant James Madison, saw Hamilton's plan as the creation of a massive, dangerous financial aristocracy, a return to the centralized tyranny they had just fought a war to escape. The vote was stalled, the country was paralyzed, and the financial fate of the republic hung by a thread. The deadlock was so severe that it threatened to unravel the entire Union. This is the moment history remembers as the dinner table bargain of 1790. The scene, a private dinner, brokered by a desperate Jefferson, hosting the two great ideological rivals, Hamilton and Madison. The stakes were nothing less than the capital city and the national currency. Hamilton needed Madison to pull Southern votes for the Assumption Act. Madison and Jefferson wanted the permanent seat of government moved from the commercial hubs of New York and Philadelphia to a less influential, more agrarian location on the Potomac River. The deal was struck in that quiet, candlelit room. Assumption passed, and the capital moved south. It was a cold, calculated transaction that literally shaped the map and the economy of the United States. With the debt unified, Hamilton now had to prove he could service it. This led to the creation of the First Bank of the United States, BUS. He argued fiercely that the government needed a central fiscal agent, a powerful, single entity to manage the debt, stabilize prices, and, most crucially, issue a standardized, universally accepted paper currency. This was the ultimate conceptual leap toward the dollar. Up until this point, America had only known fragmented, local, often worthless money. Hamilton proposed notes backed by the full faith and credit of the new federal government, channeled through the BUS. These BUS notes were designed to replace the chaos. They were redeemable in gold or silver, featured advanced security measures for the time, and bore the authority of a national charter. They weren't just money, they were the first tangible, physical symbol of the nation's unified financial power. The political fight over the BUS was the most intense of the early republic. Jefferson argued it was an unconstitutional power grab, pointing out that the Constitution didn't explicitly grant the power to create a national bank. This led to Hamilton's towering defense, the doctrine of implied powers. He wrote a definitive argument stating that the Constitution's necessary and proper clause allowed Congress to enact any measure vital to executing its enumerated powers, like taxing and regulating commerce. The Supreme Court of the time, and history, sided with Hamilton. The BUS was chartered, and the blueprint for the modern central banking system was secured. The establishment of the BUS meant that the concept of the dollar, a single, standardized unit of value, was now legally codified and institutionally supported. The new BUS notes began to circulate, quickly becoming the most trusted paper money in the fledgling nation. This was the moment the public began transferring their trust from the physical weight of gold to the promise encoded on a piece of paper. This shift was profound, philosophical, and the key to the dollar's enduring power. But the introduction of this powerful new financial mechanism instantly generated immense speculative energy. With federal credit established and BUS stock soon to be issued, the stage was set for the first great financial frenzy, a test that would immediately challenge Hamilton's brilliant system, forcing the inventor to defend his creation against the very forces of unchecked capitalism it unleashed. The quiet victory of the BUS charter was merely the prelude to the volatile spectacle of the market, where the stability of the first true national currency would face its immediate existential threat. The First Bank of the United States, BUS, notes were circulating, buoyed by Hamilton's masterful rescue during the Panic of 1792, yet the system remained incomplete, suspended between paper promise and physical permanence. The paper money was the lubricant of commerce, but it still required a hard anchor, a universally accepted metallic unit of value that would definitively sever America's financial ties to foreign currencies like the Spanish silver piece of 8 that still dominated colonial trade. The invention of the paper dollar required the invention of its physical counterpart. This necessity culminated in one of the most foundational, yet underappreciated, pieces of legislation in American history, the Coinage Act of 1792. This act was Hamilton's final, meticulous piece of financial engineering, the moment the dollar, as a unit of weight, measure, and value, was truly born. Before this, The currency was a chaotic mess of shillings, pounds, livres, and reals. The Coinage Act standardized everything, establishing the decimal system for U.S. currency and, crucially, defining the silver dollar as the new national unit of account. This was a radical break from the British system and a statement of logical simplicity. But the true genius lay in the mechanism of value, bimetallism. Hamilton established a fixed ratio between gold and silver, 15 parts silver to 1 part gold, meaning the U.S. Mint would coin either metal offered to it by citizens at no charge, guaranteeing its intrinsic value. This bimetallic standard was intended to provide stability, offering two anchors against economic turbulence, ensuring the new U.S. Mint would never be idle. The very first coin struck under this law was the flowing hair dollar of 1794, a tangible manifestation of Hamilton's abstract financial theories. It was meticulously designed to convey sovereignty and seriousness. The simple act of stamping a uniform weight of silver with the national emblem was a potent psychological move. It told the farmer, the merchant, and the foreign investor that this currency had an intrinsic, verifiable worth defined by the authority of the American Republic, not by the whim of a local governor or the shifting price of a foreign mint. The U.S. Mint, established in Philadelphia, became the symbolic heart of the new financial architecture. Its very existence was a pledge, a physical manifestation of the federal government's promise to maintain the integrity of its currency. However, the theoretical perfection of bimetallism immediately ran into a harsh reality: global market fluctuations. Hamilton's fixed ratio of 15:1 proved to be slightly undervalued compared to the market rate in Europe, where gold was considered more valuable. Foreign merchants quickly realized that they could bring silver to the U.S. Mint, have it coined into U.S. silver dollars, and then trade those dollars for American gold coins at the official 15:1 ratio, send the gold back to Europe, and make a profit on the exchange. This created a phenomenon known as Gresham's law in action: bad money drives out good money. The U.S. gold coins and the heavier, better silver coins were rapidly exported and melted down, leaving behind only the less desirable foreign coins and, crucially, making the new U.S. silver dollar scarce almost as soon as it was minted. The physical dollar, the hard anchor for the paper note, was failing to circulate effectively due to global arbitrage, creating a critical vulnerability in Hamilton's otherwise brilliant system. Simultaneously, the very success of Hamilton's bus notes, circulating widely and reliably, meant that a parallel, more sinister form of market chaos was brewing: widespread counterfeiting. State banks and unscrupulous individuals, unable or unwilling to compete with the trustworthy federal notes, began to flood the market with increasingly sophisticated, fake bus notes. The fight for the integrity of the dollar became a desperate battle between the Treasury's best engravers and the nation's most ingenious criminals. Every security measure, the intricate scroll work, the unique paper, the manual signatures, was a direct response to this ongoing financial warfare. This struggle underscored a crucial point: the value of the currency rested not only on its financial backing but on its physical impossibility to replicate. The very security features we take for granted on modern currency are a direct lineage of this 18th century fight for authenticity. The stage was now set for the final, brutal political attack on Hamilton's system. Jefferson and Madison, though defeated on the bus and Assumption, maintained a relentless ideological campaign, arguing that Hamilton's system was fundamentally corrupt and anti-republican. The financial elite, the speculators and bankers who benefited from the centralized bus, were painted as the enemies of the common man. This attack escalated beyond mere policy disagreements, morphing into a personal and political vendetta that aimed to tear down the architect himself, thereby delegitimizing the entire financial foundation he had created. The dollar, now physically defined and institutionally supported, was about to be dragged into the mud of partisan politics. Hamilton had proven he could invent the money, but could he survive the fallout of its invention? Could he protect the integrity of the bus and the currency it issued when his political enemies were actively seeking his destruction? The next act of this story pivots away from the ledger books and into the shadowy world of political espionage and personal betrayal, as the stability of the dollar becomes inextricably linked to the private life and public reputation of its creator. The Coinage Act set the standard, But the man who wrote it was running out of political capital, facing a threat far more dangerous than a market crash. The dollar was now an established unit of value, underpinned by the Coinage Act and defended by the First Bank of the United States. Yet its creator, Alexander Hamilton, was about to face a threat far more insidious than market manipulation or foreign arbitrage: the weaponization of his own private life. The political opposition, led by Jefferson and Madison, understood that to delegitimize Hamilton's financial system, they first had to destroy the man who built it. The partisan press, particularly Philip Freneau's National Gazette, was relentless, painting Hamilton as a monarchist, an elitist, and a speculator who enriched his friends at the public expense. The atmosphere was poisonous, and every transaction of the Treasury was scrutinized under a magnifying glass, searching for evidence of corruption. This relentless ideological and political warfare created the perfect conditions for a personal tragedy to become a national financial crisis. The catalyst was the Maria Reynolds affair. While the details of the personal transgression are secondary to our story, the political fallout was everything. Hamilton, in an act of staggering vulnerability, became entangled in a blackmail and extortion scheme orchestrated by James Reynolds and his wife Maria. Over the course of months, Hamilton paid significant sums of money, using his personal funds, to the Reynoldses to keep the relationship and the resulting extortion quiet. This arrangement was dangerous enough, but when James Reynolds was arrested for a separate scheme involving fraudulent claims against the government, he used the existence of the payments from Hamilton as leverage, hinting that the Treasury Secretary was involved in deep, criminal financial speculation using public funds. This was the opening Hamilton's enemies had been waiting for. A group of 3 influential congressmen, including the formidable Virginian William Branch Giles, along with James Monroe and Frederick Muhlenberg, launched a secret, informal inquiry. They believed they had unearthed the smoking gun that would prove Hamilton was embezzling money from the Treasury and using insider information to profit from his own Assumption Act. The stakes were astronomical. If Hamilton was found guilty of financial corruption, the entire system he had built, the bus, the national debt, the newly established dollar, would instantly collapse, taking the credit and reputation of the United States with it, sending the country spiraling back into the chaos of the Continental era. Hamilton's defense was a profound moral and political dilemma. When confronted by the committee, he was forced to choose between public shame and national financial stability. To prove that the money he paid Reynolds was for blackmail related to a private affair, and not a payment for an illegal financial deal involving the Treasury, he had to reveal the humiliating details of his personal life to his greatest political rivals. He made the agonizing choice to sacrifice his reputation to save the nation's credit. He presented the committee with letters that proved the true nature of the payments, unequivocally demonstrating that not a single penny of Treasury funds had been involved. The committee, satisfied that the national finances were secure, agreed to keep the evidence confidential. For a brief, agonizing moment, the financial world was safe. But the political battle was not over. Years later, when Hamilton had returned to private life and the partisan press reignited the rumors of his financial impropriety, he realized the secrecy was no longer tenable. To silence the whispers that he had abused his position as Treasury Secretary, Hamilton made an unprecedented, self-immolating decision. He published the Reynolds pamphlet in 1797. This document, over 100 pages long, contained the entire, humiliating truth, including the letters he had previously shown to the committee. It was a political suicide note written to save his legacy as a financial visionary. In the pamphlet, Hamilton meticulously laid out the facts, sacrificing his honor to definitively prove his financial integrity. The critical takeaway for the story of the dollar is this: the system survived the ultimate test. Though its architect was personally ruined and forced to resign from office, the bus notes continued to circulate, the national debt remained solvent, and international investors did not lose faith in American credit. The dollar system proved it was greater than the man who invented it. Hamilton had built a stable, institutional structure capable of withstanding the most severe political and personal shocks. But his departure left a massive void. His rivals, now fully in control, had secured their victory over the man, but they had not secured their victory over his ideas. The Federalist financial philosophy was still deeply entrenched, but the charter for the first Bank of the United States was set to expire in 1811. With Hamilton gone, the political will to renew the charter was non-existent. The agrarian, anti-central bank ideology that Jefferson and Madison championed now faced its moment of truth: dismantle Hamilton's creation entirely. This was the next great gamble for the dollar's future. The bus, the crucial anchor for the unified currency, was suddenly living on borrowed time. What would happen to the dollar and to the stability of the young republic when the central mechanism of financial control was deliberately removed? The answer arrived just 1 year after the bus was dissolved, in the form of a catastrophic national crisis that demonstrated precisely why the dollar needed a central authority, a crisis that would force a new generation of leaders to realize the terrifying truth of Hamilton's original vision, but by then, it would be too late to stop the coming financial and military disaster that lay just over the horizon, a crisis that proved the dollar could survive a man, but not the absence of a system. The dismantling of the bus was the first step toward a national catastrophe that would plunge the young country into its most profound financial and military peril since the Revolution, a period of chaos that would redefine the necessity of a stable, national currency. The year is 1811. Hamilton, the brilliant architect of the dollar, is long gone, having paid the ultimate price for his political vision. His ideological opponents, the Jeffersonian Republicans, finally achieved their greatest goal. They successfully dismantled the first Bank of the United States, BUS, by refusing to renew its 20-year charter. The moment the charter expired, the central mechanism that had stabilized the American currency for 2 decades vanished. This was an act of ideological purity, driven by the fear of centralized power and the belief that a strong federal bank infringed upon states' rights and fostered financial elitism. They celebrated the bank's demise as a victory for the common man and agrarian values. But the celebration was short-lived, for the dismantling of the bus created a vacuum of financial order that was immediately and spectacularly filled by chaos. Without the central bank to restrain them, state-chartered banks exploded in number, multiplying recklessly and issuing a torrent of their own, often unsupported, paper notes. The currency market instantly reverted to the pre-Hamiltonian nightmare. Imagine the state of American finance. Over 100 state banks printed thousands of different, unstandardized notes, their value fluctuating wildly from town to town, backed by little more than hope and local reputation. Merchants needed thick guidebooks, known as bank note reporters, just to know which notes were worthless and which could be accepted, and often only at a steep discount. This radical fragmentation meant that the dollar, the unified concept Hamilton had fought so hard to create, fragmented back into 1,000 unreliable pieces. This financial disarray was the backdrop to the inevitable, the War of 1812. The war against Great Britain demanded immediate, massive, and centralized funding. The U.S. government needed to borrow money, issue bonds, and move massive amounts of capital to finance the defense and offense. But there was no national bank to manage the transactions, distribute the bonds efficiently, or guarantee the loans. Secretary of the Treasury Albert Gallatin, a former skeptic of the bus, now found himself fighting the war on 2 fronts, the military and the financial. The government's attempts to issue war bonds were disastrous, as the decentralized state banks lacked the capacity and often the willingness to coordinate large-scale national financing. This financial paralysis meant the war effort was severely hampered. By 1814, with the British burning Washington, D.C., the very capital Jefferson and Madison had bargained for, the United States faced total financial collapse. Treasury coffers were nearly empty, credit was non-existent, and the military struggled to pay its soldiers. The collapse of the currency system was a direct cause of the nation's near defeat. The value of state bank notes plummeted, and inflation soared. In a stunning reversal of ideological dogma, James Madison, the very man who had championed the dismantling of the bus, was forced to confront the harsh reality. A nation must have a central financial authority to survive a crisis. The chaos of the war and the specter of bankruptcy proved Hamilton right beyond a shadow of a doubt. The system he built was not a tool of tyranny, but the very infrastructure of national sovereignty. The sheer economic devastation forced a reluctant, agonizing consensus. The need for a national bank was not an option, but a vital necessity. Thus, almost immediately after the war's conclusion, and as a direct result of the financial failure caused by its absence, the push began to charter a second Bank of the United States, BUS. This was Hamilton's ultimate, posthumous triumph. His rivals were forced to resurrect the very institution they had once fought so fiercely to destroy. The debates this time were not about constitutionality, but about how quickly the chaos could be contained. The second BUS was chartered in 1816, largely in the image of its predecessor, confirming the enduring power of Hamilton's original design. Its immediate task was Herculean: to restore order, rein in the inflationary state banks by demanding specie, gold, or silver for their inflated notes, and bring the fragmented dollar back into a single, reliable currency unit. The establishment of the second BUS was not the end of the fight for the dollar's soul, however. It was a temporary truce. The agrarian resentment of centralized banking remained deep, simmering beneath the surface. The next great challenge to the dollar and its central banking infrastructure would come from a populist champion who would embody the anti-elitist ideology of Jefferson, Andrew Jackson. Jackson's impending war against the Second Bank of the United States, a fight known simply as the Bank War, would be the next, fiercest, and most consequential chapter in the dollar's untold story, a battle that would permanently shatter the central banking system and plunge the nation into another, self-inflicted financial disaster, a move that still echoes in the structure of the Federal Reserve today. The dollar was saved from chaos only to be thrust into a new, existential political conflict that would define the American monetary system for the next 70 years. The groundwork for the first crisis was laid by ideology. The groundwork for the second was laid by a political figure of unprecedented, uncompromising will.